All right, well, welcome to, what am I calling this? Yes, professional interviewing, prepare and be confident. So what I like to do, I'm Dr. Stephanie Shoemaker, and I came from the counseling program, so I've been through the graduate and the doctoral program there. Wonderful people, right, Agnes?
Yes.
So anyway, what I like to do is just find out a little bit about you. So maybe if there's something that's pertinent, I can throw that into my spiel here. So maybe just your name and what your graduate degree will be in, and perhaps what you are thinking you want to do with that degree. So could we start here?
Okay. My name is Angela, and I'm also from counseling program.
Oh, great! Yay! And what do you want to do with your counseling master's, right?
Yeah. I hope I can get the LPT after. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
I'm Phoebe. I'm currently working in the international office, and I'm in the education leadership program.
Nice.
I'm going to graduate in August. So
Awesome.
what I want to do after graduation is just to work as an administration in the college or university.
Great. Okay. Good. Noted. Thank you. And yes.
Hello, my name is Kriti. I'm a doctoral candidate from Counseling and Educational Psychology Department, and I'm working on my dissertation. So I'm preparing for my assistant professor positions at the universities. So that's my goal.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Okay, yes.
Hello,
please.
My name is Cristiani. I'm pursuing my master's in public administration. My plan is to develop a career in politics, so I want to work inside the federal government, fostering and implementing projects and programs for fostering education and social programs.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Awesome. Wow. Okay.
My name is Adam, and I'm also with the Public Administration degree.
Great.
And I'm not sure right now. It's definitely teaching me a lot, so I'm hoping that it'll open up lots of opportunities for me once I complete it.
Yes. Okay, good. Love it. All right. Thank you for sharing. And that's the funny thing about a career. Sometimes you know exactly where you're headed, and other times you're thinking, well, I'm not quite too sure. But the important thing is to just be curious and be willing to learn, and you never know what's going to pop up in front of you. So we're talking about interviewing today. What questions do you have about interviewing, or what kinds of burning things come to your head, come to your mind about interviewing that you're kind of hoping you're going to learn today?
For me, one of the trickiest questions is when they ask, what is your weakness? Or what was the biggest challenge you had in your previous job?
Yes.
Because you want to be honest, but you don't want to put yourself in trouble, and then you're like wondering, is this acceptable or not?
Yes, yeah, that's a tricky question. Absolutely. So yeah, you want to have some kind of an idea for a strategic answer that's intentional. Yes, good one. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts or anything about interviewing in general? It doesn't have to be about a question, but just
So in general,
you've wondered about.
For example, always when we read a job description, we try to go to the key words of that job. So
Yes.
how to address exactly those key words when we are being interviewed.
In the interview, yes, good, love it. You're already on track.
I think I struggle with it, whether I have time to explain what my answers to the question that they have asked. I do not know why. Is it me, or in general they're rushing, or I do not know. So I think just having that knowledge of briefing your answer, and still, like she said, to the point.
Saying what you want to say,
Yeah.
but not going on forever,
Yeah.
but not making it so brief that they don't really get the full picture.
Yes.
Yeah, so somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
Yes.
Making
Good.
a decision.
Yes, very good. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, we can talk about those things for sure. Anything else? Okay? All right, well, I'll just use these slides as just a guide to help me stay on task. But when I, when I wander off, it's because I think it's going to be relevant to some of the things that you've said. And of course, I highly recommend that you come get a personal one-on-one mock interview with a career counselor at our office, because then we can tailor it to your field and perhaps the position that you're even looking for, so we can anticipate those questions and ask you those kinds of questions that you would likely get in one of your interviews for your particular job that you're searching for. So I handed out the sample list of questions, which are pretty traditional, so you can almost expect that 5, 8 questions of those are going to show up in an interview situation for you. So yeah, hopefully that'll be a useful tool, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So, so here's kind of the overview of what we're going to talk about today. And I have an hour, right, Agnes? Or is that where we're going till 2? Okay, so I have 45 minutes. Woohoo! So the first thing to know is that interviewing is a learned skill. So it's kind of like riding a bike. You're not going to just get on it and know how to do it right away. Interviewing is very much the same way. So give yourself a break. You know, it's a learning process, and the more you do it, kind of like riding a bike, the more comfortable you're going to feel and more confident you're going to feel in that. So that's why you're here today, to learn about it. That's awesome. So another thing to think about interviewing is it's like preparing for an exam. So you know how it feels to walk into an exam when you haven't prepared the way you really wanted to, and it is not a good feeling. You feel kind of queasy, not so good in your stomach, and just, oh, shoot, I wish I would have, you know, spent another couple of hours on this, or just that feeling of dread. Okay, so an interview is kind of the same way. If you don't prepare, you're going to feel more nervous, you're not going to feel confident, and that's going to be reflected in your whole posture and your answers and everything. So preparation is key. And let me tell you, if you just even spend 30 minutes looking through some of these questions and thinking about some answers, that will advance you farther than if you just walk into the room blindly. So, and I'm speaking from experience because I've done this before, walking into the room blindly and failing miserably at my interview because I just had no idea what I needed to prepare for. So life has taught me some things. It's funny how that works. So we have the before, during, and after kind of scenarios for your interviewing. And before, this is where you're going to want to do your homework and prepare. So part of that is identifying skills that you know are key for this position, doing your research in general. I'm going to go into more detail on some of these. What to bring, what to wear, and then also you can schedule a mock interview to get some really good, solid practice before you walk into your real interview. During the interview, you're going to want to just make sure you keep breathing and don't get too caught up in trying to be perfect, because there is no perfect interview. Every time I've walked out of an interview, and I've had plenty, I always think of something I should have said. Oh, darn it, I should have said that. Or I should have talked about that example. So just know it's never perfect, but you just do the best that you can, and the preparation part really helps you for that. And the interviewers know that too. So they know that you're probably not going to be perfect sitting there in your chair, because we're all human beings. We're not perfect, but you're just going to do the best that you can. And also, yeah, try to think of it as a learning experience for yourself, personally and professionally, but also a learning experience in the sense that you're learning about this company. What kind of atmosphere are you walking into? Are they being very hospitable and friendly with you? Or is this kind of a cold, stern environment? Or, you know, what is the feeling you're getting from this organization or this group, if it's a panel, or from this person? So you're interviewing them too. So you're gathering your information about this this group or this person and thinking, you know, is this somebody that I want to interact with every day and work with? So you're, you know, you're doing an assessment as well. So after your interview, one thing I'm putting it up here right up front is send a thank you note, because I was actually talking to some recruiters today, and you know, sometimes it comes down to the two candidates that are really fairly equal as far as their skills and experience, but then, you know, the one that sends the thank you note guess what? They got the offer. So it's such a simple thing, but many people forget about a nice thank you note, which can either be an email or an old good old-fashioned card that you handwrite, which is what I like to do because I'm old-fashioned. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then, of course, afterwards you can always check the status of your application too. So I'll go into some more detail about that. All right, so before the interview, we're in the skill identification stage. So one of the best ways to do that is to just get your job description that you're applying for and highlight all the things that you see that they are looking for. Are they looking for certain software skills? Are they looking for certain collaboration, leadership? Usually they'll say written and verbal communication skills. Those are huge and just kind of across any field. So you just want to hone in on those particular things that they're looking for, and maybe it's a master's degree in public administration. Okay, great, you're getting that. Check. You know, highlight that. You want to make sure that you emphasize that in your interview or on your resume as you're applying. So there might be some things that are more, documented kinds of experiences, and others you might have to explain and sell a little bit more. So let's see. Yes, I was talking about all those things. Problem solving, so that analytical and critical thinking piece. Every organization or business is going to want to find somebody who wants to solve problems and who does it well. So that's really very much a universal skill. So anytime that you can exemplify that or talk about that in an interview, then that's something you definitely want to put in your toolbox that you're going to bring with you to that interview, so you can tell your stories about all the experiences that you can bring, the skills that you can bring to that organization and make it better. Related experience is always really important. So they're going to want to see, how is this person going to transfer into my organization and be effective and be successful? So relatable experiences are definitely something that you're going to want to highlight. So let's say that a job is asking for, let me see. They're asking for some kind of sales experience. So look at that sales experience and think, okay, well, I've had customer service experience, which is certainly related to sales experience. Maybe I haven't sold things specifically like, pharmaceuticals or something very technical, but I have, worked in food service, or I have worked in retail, and so I have those kinds of customer service sales skills. So just thinking about how those things can transfer as far as experience goes. Sometimes you have to think a little bit outside the box and bend the rules a little bit to show, what kinds of great skills that you can bring to that employer. And if you need help with that, then we can help you in career services. So make sure you come visit us so we can hone, create a better description of you in the way that you want to be described to this employer, and highlight those things that are going to be important or key for this position. So other things that you'll want to do is, with regard to just general research, memorize that job description, because the more that you can speak to those key terms in your conversation, then the more they're going to see the connection of, so you already do this, or you did this in a previous position. The other thing is just researching the field in general, so kind of having a knowledge of what are people doing as far as job duties in general in this kind of a position. So if you're looking at entry-level professorial positions, look at different campuses, look at different colleges and see how they're describing that. And we kind of have a picture of what that looks like, but also just understanding, that some are more geared toward research, or some are more geared toward just teaching, or some are more geared toward developing a program, but also, involving some teaching. So having that kind of knowledge, you just bring more to the conversation to have with those people who are probably kind of experts in their field at this point. If they're interviewing you as an entry-level person or as a new person. So they appreciate someone with a breadth of knowledge about this particular field, whatever it is that you're interested in. So one way that you can do that is by going to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which is a comprehensive encyclopedia online of careers, and it's free, and it's put together by the U.S. government, and so it's got a lot of fabulous data and information, so including salary information, which you will want to know before you walk in the room on that first interview. You kind of want to have some knowledge of a range of a decent pay scale for you, because most of the time that doesn't come up in the first conversation. That'll come up later, and you wait for the employer to start talking about it. However, I have heard of occasions where people will be asked right up front, so how much do you want to make? So you never know what might be coming at you, so you want to be prepared. Again, if you do your homework, you kind of already know this stuff. So you can say, well, based on what I've researched in the area, I've seen a range of 45 to 50 or 35 to 45. And so, but I am open to a conversation about salary. So you always leave it open at the end of that sentence so that you make yourself just available for open thought on that. So you don't limit yourself on, well, I've heard 45, and so, that's kind of where I'm at. That's not the conversation that you want to start with a potential employer. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on. So more of doing your homework. Doing your research about that organization. Companies and organizations love it when you know things about them, like their history, how they got started, who their founding board members were, things like, or it's current events. Are they expanding? Are they adding a new division? If you know those kinds of things, you can weave that into your conversation, and that's impressive because they can see that you've taken some extra time to find out about them in particular. And I can't say anybody who's not impressed by that. And also, who are their competitors? And and that might mean other rival colleges or universities, or who's selling our same kinds of goods or offering our same kind of products. And understanding the difference between those two, and why you want to be with this organization because you feel like what they have to offer is better. So those kinds of little mini conversations that you can have within an interview. Let's see, understanding their mission or their vision or their values, which is usually you can find that somewhere on their webpage. It's not hard to find this information. But if you can weave that into your conversation about how, your mission is to serve others and, ensure patient quality care, and that's their vision, that they're gonna hear their values. They're gonna recognize that and know that you're gonna be a good fit if that's truly the case. What else? Also, just talking your language, so that the buzzwords and the trends. So knowing what's happening with regard to, let's see if I can think of an example. So let's talk about counseling for a minute, and knowing that there's a trend toward more online or over the Skype, or not Skype, but private confidential types of media, so that people don't have to leave their homes. Knowing those kinds of trends about the field, just add to your value as being viewed as a knowledgeable candidate. So those kinds of things, you just want to be on top of that in those interviews, situations, and then also the buzzwords. So the more that you can use the vernacular or the vocabulary of your field, the more you sound like an official, you're already playing the game, you're already in there using this kind of language that they speak already. So using that is key in your conversations. That doesn't mean you need to go out and memorize a bunch of words to, try to use in your conversations, but, just be aware that when you can throw those in there, then, like evidence-based, practices or those kinds of terms that are in the healthcare field, for example, that kind of thing. It's important to just be aware of those kinds of key terms that you can throw in. So what to bring to a resume? No, what to bring to an interview? But yes, you'll definitely want to bring a resume. Bring at least one. Because you never know when someone else might sit in on your conversation and they'll just pull in Bill over here because, hey, he works with this department, and and then if they don't have an extra one at the time, you can say, oh, I brought an extra one, and then you look prepared, and they appreciate that, and it's a good reflection on you. If you have a panel interview, then you might want to bring several extra resumes, because if there's already 5 people in the room, they might just add another 3, because why not? Our corporate people are here today, and they decided they wanted to sit in with us. So it never hurts to bring, a few extra resumes, and maybe it'll be they forgot it on their desk, and that when they came to the room with you, you happen to have one handy. So there it is. You've made their job easier already. Arriving 10 to 15 minutes early is a good window to give them time. That's kind of when they're expecting you to arrive. So if you arrive 30 minutes early, then they're going to have to find a place to put you, because there might be a candidate ahead of you, and that could be awkward. So don't make them feel awkward. 10 to 15 minutes is just about the right window that they're expecting you to arrive before your interview. So if you're that early, just wait in your car, take a little walk, whatever you want to do before you walk in that door. And if you want, you can check your travel time before. I know I've driven downtown before in a city where I knew I had to get parking. I wanted to check the traffic patterns. I did not want to be late or mess this up. So I prepared by just going the week before, just to time it and give myself time, and make yourself early so that you do sit in the car, and then you can do some breathing exercises and kind of help yourself get calmed down before, because if you're racing in there and then you got to do your interview, and it's harder to do it that way. So give yourself a break. It's a stressful arrangement. So yeah, if you can get there a little early and breathe, that's good for you. If you want, you can bring a briefcase or a portfolio, and I should have brought an example of a portfolio, but just those, like this is perfect example right here. This gentleman has one, yes. So something that you can put your resume in, keep a notebook of paper and a pen, perfect size, and it's not too cumbersome and clunky. And if you happen to get a tour of the facility, you could carry that with you, and it wouldn't be too much. So in that, did I say paper? Not really, but I always bring paper so that I can write down notes, maybe write down some questions that I have, write down the names of the people I'm speaking with so that I can send them a thank you note afterwards, or ask for business cards while you're in the session, because that's usually pretty traditional to ask for a card. And always bring your energy, enthusiasm, and your smile, because when they're sitting across from that table with you, they're thinking, do I want to work with this person? Is this somebody who's going to make our organization better, or is going to be a contributor? So, what your whole posture, your stance, your personality, it's going to sell you as well as your answers. So some things that you might not want to bring are, you'll probably bring your cell phone, but just turn it off. This isn't the time to be getting buzzes and beeps and ringers going off during the conversation, because it's just a distraction from what you're trying to convey to the interviewers. The other things are, a backpack it has that student connotation to it, which isn't all bad, but again, you've got zippers and pockets and things, so if you want to find something, it's not as formal as, say, like a portfolio or something a little bit smaller. Even just a manila folder has more of a professional image to it than a backpack, so try not to bring that if you could. And then, of course, large purses that are swingy and heavy and kind of distracting as well. A smaller purse with just your basic necessities is a better arrangement all the way around, especially if you're going to end up taking a tour of the office, or who knows what they might want to, where they might want to walk with you. So those comfortable shoes too, which I'm getting to on, you know, what to wear, what not to wear. So this is a big piece of the puzzle, and I know some people get kind of a little bit offended by, you know, why aren't they just looking at my value as a human being? Why are we so worried about how we look and, you know, the outside of us? Well, the reality is that, you know, in a professional environment, we give a message that, you know, if I came in here in my cutoff shorts and a tank top to give this presentation to you today, that would convey a very different message than how I'm dressed now. So people tend to be taken a little more seriously if they're dressed in a professional way. And that's really what it comes down to with interviewing. So you want your message to be taken seriously, and that's with professional dress. So this gentleman doesn't really quite have it all together. He kind of made an effort, but he's still lacking a few little finishing touches. And of course, campus gear is really not appropriate. I know that there's some technological, can't say that word today, fields, IT and whatever, they're becoming less formal in their dress. But when you're trying to make a best first impression, it's always a good idea just to go the whole 9 yards and, you know, suit up, or at least wear a shirt and some slacks, or wear a tie with that. Because it's impressive to the other folks that are meeting you for the first time. They don't know you, they don't know who you are. These are some don'ts for the ladies. I think sometimes women think that if they just dress up like they're going out, or like, you know, it's a fancy occasion, that that's okay. But really, that's not okay. Professional dress is different than, you know, prom wear. So you need to be aware of that. And then also, this dress is, although it is more of a professional cut, it has a very busy print on it, and so it's distracting. And so you want the people who are listening to you to focus on this and what's coming out, not what's going on around you. So that's why the conservative dress is really important for an interview. You want them to focus on you and the content of your message. So why do you think this one is not okay? Because I see this quite a bit.
Short skirt.
Yeah, her skirt is a little distracting. It's a little bit short. So there's a little too much skin involved in this outfit. And so the rule of thumb is, if you take a dollar bill and turn it on its side the horizontal way and place that above the top of your knee, then that's as short as you would want to get. And then even then, when you sit down, it's going to come up even farther. So what I say is just wear slacks, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's what I do. That's my answer to that conundrum. But you know, you'll have to try that on for size based on, you know, what you're comfortable with. But that is my suggestion to you. So for men, we suggest dark colored suits, or you could wear a blazer with khakis. That's certainly appropriate. You know, if you don't have a suit yet, as students, I think employers are definitely more forgiving than if you've been in the field for 10 years. You know, they're going to expect you to probably come in the room in a suit. But we have an advantage because we're students in that way. So shirts should be, you know, just what you're seeing here, just this traditional button down. Light colors tend to be a little bit better because they actually brighten up your face a little bit more and highlight your face. This is a darker color, so it's okay, but you know, white or light blue or light yellows, those are nice. And be careful of, you know, magenta or purple or those kind of brightly distracting colors. Again, you want them to focus on you and what you're saying and not what's happening around what you're saying. So nicely polished shoes. Ties should be conservative colors and solids or small prints. And then if you do have tattoos, or if you have piercings or that sort of thing, then you just want to either minimize those or take them out or cover them up, because again, we don't want distractions from what you're saying and and who you really are. Clean shaven, be careful about cologne for both males and females because some people have allergies, and sitting in a little room talking with you, you know, they might tear up, they might have asthma, so it's just better not to do that. Yes?
It's just a comment, it's not a question, but it's interesting because once I was with a shirt that had a sleeve that looked like a tattoo, but I was already working, and then my boss came, "Did we hire you with this tattoo?"
And you said, yes, you did. Like, I don't have a tattoo.
"Oh, it's your shirt." And
Oh, yes.
It was like I was already working for him, but he was surprised.
He came after the fact and he's like,
Yes.
did we break code?
So
Yes.
this that you brought, you know, it's really a fact because he knew already me for many months, and he was surprised with that, even though it wasn't a tattoo.
Yes, so good point. So that's where, you know, the solid colors can help without, instead of a print in an interview situation anyway. Before they know you and know who you are, they're just going to assess, you know, what they're seeing, really. And so for ladies, very similar, kind of those darker colors, conservative colors are best. And they also wear better, you know, so over time you don't have to dry clean them as often, and you don't have, you know, if you spill something, oh, you can just brush it off. So the lighter colors, you need to be careful with those. Let's see, conservative necklines, so, you know, cover up your cleavage. That we don't need to share that in an interview. That's not an important information. This is the important information here. Let's see, smaller accessories, subtle makeup, and you don't have to polish your nails, but just make sure, even for men too, just make sure your nails are clean and at least kind of manicured in some way. Because, you know, that is for hygienic reasons, as well as just having that professional polished look. And again, no perfume, and cover those tattoos. And although I know that there's a trend in tattoos these days, and they're viewed as art, and they're viewed as beautiful, and, you know, an expression of yourself, and that's all good and well. But the thing is, you have to think about the person on the other side of the table and their perceptions of tattoos, and you know, our older generations who tend to be the ones hiring, they have different perceptions about tattoos and what that means about, you know, what you're doing in your spare time, or, you know, what kind of a person you are, you know, with regard to work ethic. So you just have to be aware that there are perceptions that are out there. So the less that you have to distract, the better. So here's some examples of some good looking suit examples. I'm sorry, this one's a little blurry, but you know, the hair is either pulled back. So if you have really long hair, you might want to pull it back, or if you know you're this kind of a person, you might want to pull it back so that it's not distracting during the conversation. And that's perfectly a good idea. And then also, we have a suit closet on campus that students can borrow suits or a blazer if that's all you need or want. So for a $5 deposit, you can come to Career Services and borrow something. And so you don't have to try to rush out and worry about an interview and finding clothes and, you know, preparing for all this stuff. So hopefully we can help you in that. So you just borrow it till the interview is over and bring it back and move on your way. So scheduling a mock interview is also an option. I highly recommend it because, again, it's like riding a bike. The more that you do this, the better your answers are going to become. The more confident you're going to feel in how you're formulating your answers and what you want to share with that interviewer. So that's just as easy as picking up the phone and making an appointment with us. Yeah, and then we can tailor it to whatever position that you're looking for. So we can really simulate a fairly realistic scenario for you. Okay, so moving on to interview questions. I handed out some samples to you. So the thing about the questions, I think this is probably one of the most intimidating parts of an interview, understandably, because it's like an oral exam, right? Pretty much. But with like these sample questions here, you can prepare for quite a bit. Even though you don't know exactly what's coming, Once you have examples of when you've overcome a disgruntled customer, or overcome a difficult coworker, or give me an example of when you coordinated something or organized an event. Once you come up with those examples, that's pretty much, you know, what they're going to be firing at you, even though it might be worded slightly differently, or if you had to do something over again, what would it be and why? You know, those kinds of things are kind of fairly universal. And so what they're looking for is not necessarily the perfect answer and the right answer and the same answer. What they're looking for is this person creative? Are they a thinker? Do they face problems head on? Or is this somebody that I'm going to have to be following up on all the time? And you know, are they going to be you know, too scared or intimidated to try to solve problems on their own? Or you know, they want to know that you can make decisions wisely, with some sense of logic. And so, you know, you'll share examples of how you've already done that in your interview. Okay, so there's different kinds of questions, and they're very intentional. So there's traditional questions like, tell me about yourself, the wide open one that freaks people out because, wow, where do I go with that? Or what is your greatest weakness? Yes. So, so the thing to keep in mind is that these are always framed around the scenario of, for example, tell me about yourself in relation to this position. That's what that question really means. And that's what they really want to hear. They don't want to hear about your whole upbringing and how many siblings you had and if you're married and, you know, where you went to high school. They want to know, you know, what can you bring to my organization? That's really what that question means. What is your greatest weakness in relation to this position? So I don't want to know about how you have an eating problem or you're addicted to ice cream. I want to know about, you know, something that's a professional weakness, but also what you're doing to change it. So I think a common answer for students is that maybe they have some problems with time management, but what they've learned after a couple of semesters under their belt is that if they just organize themselves and are more intentional with their time and plan it out, that they can be better about that. And you know, some people use their phone for reminders, or some people use a planner and write out their whole week or month ahead of time. So just talking about how you're overcoming whatever that particular weakness might be. We're all humans, we all have weaknesses. And you can Google this too and get some ideas and think about, okay, what would my weakness be? Don't try to make something up that's not real, because interviewers can tell if you're kind of fudging around an answer that's not true to your heart. So talk about something that is, you know, true for you, but what you've done to overcome it. So then they can see that, okay, you're a problem solver. Here's the reality of everybody has a weakness, but here's what you're doing to overcome that. Does that make sense? And if you need more ideas about that, then just come talk to us about that. But there's actually some decent information with a Google search on that as well. I know I've done that before to just get some ideas of like, what could I talk about? Like, oh yeah, that's a weakness of mine for sure. Okay, so the behavioral questions, these are really common too. So these are the ones where you're going to tell a story. You're going to give an example of something. And that's the kind of thing that they remember you by. You know, not just a list of traits, but the stories that you tell about yourself and how you overcame a situation, or how you overcame adversity, or how you thought outside the box. So these are some examples. Tell me about a time when you had to complete a task while you were under pressure. They want to know, what process did you go through to, you know, get through that? And what was the end result? Was there a positive result? So this is your advantage, because you can prepare examples that have happy endings, right? And they might ask you about the time, when did you make a mistake, and, you know, what did you learn from it? So you'll want to have that kind of an answer prepared as well. But still, it's something that you've chosen because you've prepared. So it's not necessarily just something you thought of and just came to your mind, and then you regretted it later because, oh, that probably wasn't the best example I could have given, because I've done that before too. Give me an example of when you had to work with a difficult person. This is pretty common. So this is whether it's a coworker, a teammate, a customer. You can pretty much expect that question is coming, and they're going to want to know, what are your relational skills, your communication skills? What did you do with that person? How did you solve that problem? How did you get through that issue? Because you're going to have those same kind of issues in any job that you're in, right? So that's what they're evaluating. And then also don't forget to bring your own questions to the interview. So at the very end, most of the time they'll ask you, do you have any questions for us? And so if you say, no, I'm good, thank you for your time, that is not a good way to end that conversation, right? It kind of just kind of cuts it off without, anything. So prepare some questions before. So some easy peasy ones that you can use are, so what is your hiring timeline? What's the next step in the process? That's a very legitimate question to ask during an interview. Another one might be, what's a typical day like for this person? Because sometimes that job description is written and rewritten by HR and then posted, but now you're talking to the manager who is in the trenches with this person. So their description might be a little bit more in depth, or maybe a little different than what you had interpreted from the written description. So that's important for you to know. And then also another thing you could ask is, what are the qualities of a successful person in this position? And so then you're really kind of asking them to dig a little deeper to tell you, what are they really looking for? And then if you feel like you haven't really addressed some of those qualities in the conversation, well, now's your chance. You can say, oh, yes, I have had a lot of collaboration experience with big teams because of this, or whatever. So it's a last chance for you to sell yourself and kind of know what they're really thinking about what they want. And then, of course, there's acceptable and not acceptable questions to ask. So don't ever ask about salary until they start that conversation. They're the ones that need to ask that question. And just be sensitive and professional. So don't ask them too personal of a question, but maybe you could ask them, how did you get to your position? What was your journey like to get to where you are in your career? People love talking about themselves and their careers. So that's always a good way to just kind of get them to warm up a little bit and share about themselves. I personally, this is my favorite part of an interview process because it becomes more conversational and more like you're talking as equals instead of them at the higher level asking you questions as this kind of on the grilling arrangement. So there's really some nice conversation that can come out if you have some good questions prepared. And then they light up too, like, oh, so they really are interested in this position in our company and our organization. Okay, let's talk some more. So anyway, it's an important part of the process if you're really serious about this job. So here's some things to remember. I'm sorry, these kind of came out a little small. Practice your handshake, because that's also another thing that they're evaluating about you. Because some people have you ever had one of those limp fish handshakes? Yeah, I have, and they're kind of awkward and weird. So you can practice with us. In fact, if we have time, we're kind of running out of it, but I would like for us to practice, maybe after we run out of time here, or when we wrap up. Think about what the purpose of the question is. So rather than thinking about, oh, what's the right answer for this question, think about, okay, so what do they really want to know? And that can also come from your preparation stage, because when you're in the heat of it, you might not actually take the time to do this, but think about the purpose behind some of these questions. Bring your own questions. It's okay to ask for clarification or repeat of a question, especially because sometimes they're multi-leveled, and so you want to make sure that you're answering it correctly rather than just assuming that you're answering it correctly. So it's okay to say, so what you're asking is for A and for B, right? Just do a little check-in. That's perfectly fine. And it also can buy you some thinking time, too. So your body language is important. So you'll want to sit up at the edge of your chair, not leaning back in the back of your chair, because it just looks more like, less engaged, I guess. is one way to describe that. Try to be organized in your answers. So I try to use the power of threes, and using 3 examples if they're asking me kind of an open-ended question, you know. So why should we hire you over other candidates? So I try to name 3 things that I think why I'm qualified for this position. So it's a decent enough number. It's not too long that I ramble on, but yet it's not just one thing, because that's really, you're not selling yourself enough if you're just going to give one reason. And let's see, they want to hear your critical thinking strategies. So that's some of that storytelling, you know. Well, first I thought, okay, I've got to organize myself and make sure that, you know, all of my tasks are in some sort of logical order, or, you know, whatever. So thinking out loud to show them how you think. Does that make sense? That's kind of a useful process. And then also, you know, use this opportunity to learn, to meet new people, to network. Maybe this isn't the job that you will have, you know, at the end of the week. However, you're going to meet people in that room that maybe could connect you to another job. Or, you know, just think of it as go in with a curious, open mind, and you never know what might come out of any kind of an interview situation. And sometimes it's the, hey, you know, we decided not to hire you for this, but we're going to be opening this other position, and we think you're a really good fit for that one. I mean, you never know what's coming. So, yeah, just try to be open. And after the interview, follow up, send that thank you note, and that could be in an email if you're more comfortable with that. I like to take a box of thank you notes with me to the interview, so I try to get everybody's name. I go out to my car, I write the thank you notes, and then I walk them back in to the receptionist or the front desk or whatever, and I hand deliver them right then and there, because I know me, if I wait too long, it'll just get pushed off and I won't do it. So that's my method of writing thank you notes. And I know I enjoy a personally handwritten note much more than an email, because email's kind of, everybody does it. Not a lot of people do a handwritten note these days. So that's a really great way to follow up and to stand out. And then also, in a week, if you haven't heard from them, then check in. Just let them, you can send an email, you could call the office and just say, I'm really interested in the position. I'm just wondering, you know, how things are going. Have you made any decisions? I just want you to know I'm still interested. So you don't have to be annoying and hounding them, but just making sure they know I'm still interested in this position. So,
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you note. How do you, if you would prepare, how would you would do, like, say you had the interview on Monday, then you would go back to their office and hand it, or?
Yeah, so you could post it, you could send it in the mail. And so, but what I like to do is just write it that day and then walk it back into the office after I'm done. In my car, I go and write them in my car, and I just say, thank you for your time. I really enjoyed having this conversation. And I try to pick something out of the conversation to kind of highlight, like, I really appreciate your focus on research, because I think it's so important to use evidence-based practices while we do our job. You know, whatever comes out of the conversation, and then just say, you know, I look forward to talking to you in the future. Something kind of brief, nothing too crazy long. So, like, you know, just one of those little note cards that maybe folds over and says thank you on the front, or it's blank even. So just something simple. So, yeah, okay, good question. Good question, I love it. Then another thing you want to do is if you're applying for several positions, keep a file of all the paperwork you've submitted for that position, because believe me, this has happened to me and I've regretted it. You know, I was like, which resume did I submit to that one? Or where was the cover letter that I had for that? Because you never know what you might have to follow up on. So it's good to just keep track of all those things in a neat little file on your hard drive, or on your special thumb drive for job applications or something like that, because there's a lot of paperwork that comes back and forth, or communication and emails. So the more organized you can be, the better that looks as well for when you need to respond to things. So with regard to the thank you letters, these slides got reversed, I think, but anyway, try to do it within a day if you can. It's professional etiquette. It makes you stand out. Sometimes it's going to be the deciding factor if they have another candidate that's similar to your experience. And then you can do it email or handwritten. So I already said all that. Okay, and so that's kind of the gist of the overview of interviewing. And so, do you have any other questions that you would like to ask? Yes.
I see you mentioned do not ask for salary in the interview, the first interview. But I'm an international student here, and then I have to ask for the sponsorship. Should I ask in the first interview, or I should wait?
Yeah, so I would say that's a very good question, because when you're applying, yeah, they may or may not ask you to specify. So I think it would be okay to say something like, so I think I should have this discussion with you, like if they say, wait till the end when you have your chance to ask questions, and say, you know, I just want to make sure that you know that I'm an international student, and that, you know, there's some considerations with regard to hiring me, and, you know, are you aware of that? Because that is a professional courtesy that you're offering them, so that they don't go down this, you know, path of going through the hiring process and then find out that you know, have international status. So that is a very professional thing to just put out up front, and they will appreciate that. And you know, even if they can't accommodate you now, but at least you haven't, you know, have them spend a lot of hours troubling over you, and then they can't hire you anyway. So that's probably a pretty good conversation to have for rather soon, because also you don't want to spend a lot of time going to a bunch of interviews and then realizing, you know, they're not going to, you know, sponsor me. So I think that that's a very legitimate question to ask in the first interview, definitely. But maybe not so much about the salary piece, but about the fact that, you know, you're not a citizen, or, you know, we could talk about how to word that in a professional way. So that's a good question.
I just
Yeah.
want to share something I learned from my interview is
Yeah.
it's okay to say things like that, but you need to say it very confidently. Like, this
Yeah.
is what I bring. It's not, there's nothing.
Right, not be apologetic about it. Yes, absolutely. Because you do bring great skills and experience with you as well. And there's certainly certain fields that are more, you know, acceptable to that kind of, you know, arrangement for international people, employees. And actually, Going Global is on our website. And so that is a service that we subscribe to. And you can hop on to Going Global as a student, and you can look up companies and see who's hiring and who's sponsoring the H-1B visas. So you can kind of already see who's out there. And of course, a lot of universities do that. A lot of technology companies do that. Engineering, a lot of the STEM field kinds of jobs and companies do that. But you can also look up certain fields and see what companies pop up related to your field. So I can show you how to do that. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, well, hopefully we'll see you in Career Services soon. We'll be happy to help you. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. You're a great audience.